So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for investing your time to be with us here today at the DataPorts final event. My name is Christos Gizelis. I'm Principal Innovation Analyst at IT Innovation Center of OT Group of Companies and also Impact Manager of DataPorts. And it's my privilege to serve as a moderator in this interesting panel. It is actually a very interesting topic that we'll discuss today. Research shapes the future of Seaports ecosystem. And we will be talking about the business aspects in general, opportunities, but also challenges that we have to address and take into account. But before we dive into the discussion, let me introduce you our distinguished guests. Ladies first, Ms. Sue Probert, Chair at the United Nations Center for Trade Facilitation and Electronic Business, Mr. Daniel Saez, Strategic Intelligence and Technology Transfer Director at ITI, Mr. Christophe Joubert, Chief Operating Officer International at Prodevelop, and Mr. Jaime Luezas, Head of Unit Service to Port Community, Puertos del Estado. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We open our discussion with lady first. So, Sue, trade is about exchanging products and relevant services effectively. When we talk about smart ports, data are the commodities. How is this agenda addressed by UN CEFACT, European Union, or even IMO? I think you are the best person to explain us.
Thank you. Yes, I introduced the challenging part because regulations are increasing all the time that affect ports. And I will be spending the next 2 weeks in London. By the way, thank you for inviting me. I'm very pleased to be here. Very impressed with your new buildings in Valencia. I will take that memory back with me and this meeting. I'm very impressed with the results of the project as well, I'd like to say. But yeah, in IMO next week, we'll be discussing the next version of the IMO reference model, as it's called, which is the data model for maritime ports and operations. And it started off with the IMO FAL forms, which maybe many of you are familiar with. But it's extending now to cover ship-to-ship activities, standardized reporting from vessels, and many other areas of port management, but also vessel management and maritime regulations. Of course, that's where VDM came from, which we heard about this morning. And what's interesting is that from here we are an EU port here, and we also have the DG Move EU Maritime Single Window regulation being developed at the moment. And I have two hats. One is a volunteer for the UN, PCE in my role, but also I'm a data modeler, and I'm working at the moment on a couple of DG Move projects directly with the Commission. One of them is FT, which you may not have heard about, which is the Freight Transport Initiative of DG Move, which is going to be collecting on distributed platforms all the data for all the inland modes. So it's barge, rail, road. Anything moving in the EU in the future will have to register its data onto the FT platform, and that will then be available to, it's like another single window by another name. Then on the European Maritime Single Window, they've just published last month the first data set, which is over 1,000 data elements. And a number of those have come from individual ports. They're what they call the sea data elements. And they asked all the ports to say, what do you want? And of course, they came up with many new data elements, which not all ports may want. And at the moment, it's not even harmonized. But there's a standard set of data, which is the IMO FAL data, plus a European set of extra data. And they're committed from the EU, from the Commission, to work with IMO to make sure that the European regulations will be aligned with the IMO international regulations, which I think is incredibly important for all the ports in Europe. So we will be discussing interesting things in the next 2 weeks about JIT, which I also heard mentioned this morning, but I don't know whether it's the same JIT, but and we will be looking at ballast water management and several other areas that are all covered by the reference data model. But for your information, to bring CEFACT into this, IMO produces this data model, which is not for implementation. It's the data model maintained by IMO for all the data related to all the different regulations of IMO in the maritime sector. But they have 3 partnerships to provide implementation platforms. And one of them is the UN CEFACT platform, which is the multimodal transport reference model, which has been referenced by this project, I know, which is excellent. And we have guaranteed to provide a full implementation data model based on the IMO reference data model. So for the vessels themselves, who already use a lot of UN CEFACT standards, mostly EDIFACT at the moment for container, but they will also be able to support all the IMO that they need, and then ports can also use it as well. The other 2 partners, for your information, are the World Customs Organization, and their scope is only the customs regulatory aspects, important as they are, but it doesn't cover everything. And the other one is an ISO committee, which deals with the port operations, but doesn't cover all the other areas. So the only one that will cover all will be UN CEFACT. Here I am selling it, but we hope that all this work, which will be important to all of you, and if any of you have any links with any of the standardization processes, these will be regulations that will apply. Thanks very much. Challenges.
Thank you very much, Sue. The variety of data required a lot of work to be done in data modeling, and DataPorts indeed had invested a lot in this aspect. Jaime, the next question is to you, and it's related to the DataPort solutions presented earlier. So what is the aspiration of the ports? And do you believe that DataPorts addresses these challenges that you faced on the way to digital transformation? In addition, is there any platform that allows data sharing from different ecosystem or different platforms?
Thank you, Christos. Good afternoon for everybody. Thank you, Valenciaport. Thank you, DataPorts. Thank you, the Foundation, for inviting me here. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, answering to the questions. I think that ports are at the same time important nodes in large logistic and transport and supply chains, and at the same time are clusters of different private companies, businesses, and companies. So they are in a unique position to receive the effects of digitalization. No, I think ports must develop solution to address of these challenges of that data sharing, digitalization, and the transformation of the way of doing business in transport and logistics. No, so I think that DataPorts we have seen this morning is a good approach. I think is a very good example, I think, of the approach that must be followed by ports. No? But if it's also true that there is a challenge in connecting ports with the rest of the chain and with other ports. And I think there is needed a platform to connect environments and different ecosystem or platforms. Here in Spain, we are developing a project which is called SIMPLE, which is an acronym in English of Simplification of Processes for Logistic Enhancement, and is about is promoted by Puertos del Estado, the railway administration, the railway administrator of Spain, which is called ADIF, and the Ministry of Transport, and it's a way to integrate all the digital complexity of the road, the rail, and the maritime and port sectors, no? with the objective to interchange or share data between private companies and also between the business, the private business and the public authorities. So it's a way to add value among all to the supply chain. So I think it's a very interesting approach to have a platform that connect every platform, because I think there is not in any platform or any business that do everything. We receive data from sensors or from system or from platforms, but the true challenge is to interconnect everything.
So after all, it was a good investment by European Commission to invest in DataPorts, because DataPorts actually creates the environment, the trust, the secure environment for data sharing, and also the integration with other platforms. It's good to verify that. So, Christophe, the interest of integrators to be engaged in data-driven platforms or to be part of the Seaport transformation is reasonable. Do you believe that this market is mature enough?
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, and in particular the DataPorts project and consortium to invite me to be present in this panel discussion. So actually, the answer to this question is already given more or less by the composition of this panel of experts, because not everything is about technology, and there is a lot of regulation at different levels. Well, I'm very pleased to see that we are all on the same strategic line. So everyone is playing a role. So we, as an integrator, we try to make solutions that are the most scalable possible to any ports in the world, following the standardization regulation. But this is possible only if there is some kind of agreement. So our solutions, we have been working for 30 years already. Our solutions are based on agreement on the processes, on the data, on the regulation, and this really depends on different scenarios. So we have seen that in terms of port management system, it has been consolidated. In terms of port community system, local or global, also it has been consolidated. We have been hearing about regulations, both on the national part. Port authorities have the obligation to publish data to the national single window, but in terms, the national single has its obligation to publish and share data with SafeCNet on the European scale, and to follow the regulations by IMO or implementation by UN CEFACT. So we are like in a process. It was also mentioned this morning by the innovation director of the Port of Valencia, and the maturity of each port makes the decisions on one solution on the other. So DataPorts here tries to push towards this willingness to share data and to enhance the state of the art also in terms of technology, artificial intelligence, machine learning, predictions to make ports more smart and analytical. So in terms of technology, we have been working also in expert groups at the UN CEFACT. Actually, it's quite on the same line. So I'm very happy that also in DataPorts, they are following this technology path, and we are all aligned. So we have to advance. There is a lot of more things to do and lots to consolidate on all scales. Thank you.
Thank you. It was mentioned earlier in the morning by Juan that smart ports require smart people. So it is on us to exploit deeper this and create this ecosystem and have a great results. So Daniel, your turn. Data-driven market is making its early steps, and it requires many stakeholders from different sectors in order to create or use AI-based services. Based on your experience, do you consider as a key element in order companies to create data-driven culture in the economy? Is there a need for an awareness strategy so companies embrace data-based services, but but also to be more engaged and willing to share data.
Thank you very much, Christos, and thank you very much to all the partners of DataPorts that have been very committed with this project and have made it a success. And I'm going to talk in my position as Strategic Intelligence and Technology Transfer Director in ITI, which is a technology center which is working very hard with companies, directly with companies, and trying to help them in order to go into the data economy, right? And more in a general way, not just focused on the data in the ports ecosystem, but also we can transfer these explanations to the ports ecosystems. Yes, you're right. The data driven is a very promising market, but it is also a very challenging one with a lot of barriers and a lot of risks. In the digital economy, when we talk about data, we are talking about the more disruptive technologies that can create new business models, new services, more personalized services, more personalized products, efficiency. We can talk about how to deal with the social, the environmental trends, and so on. But in Europe, we need to take into account the citizens and the companies' rights in order to work with data. And this is the focus of the European data strategy, which is different from all the other strategies in the world. US has a different strategy regarding data, and China has another strategy. So in Europe, we are now addressing a lot of challenges related to regulations, related to how we are dealing with data, and this is our brand, our value, our differentiation from the other. And then when we go to companies in order to see and answering your question if it is needed an awareness strategy, when we go to companies and we talk about the advantages and of the data economy, they want to go into that data economy, but they are not well prepared. So we see a very different levels of maturity in companies in the same sector. Inside the ports sectors, for example, you can have companies that are working on exploiting data, are very well connected, are exchanging data, but there are others that they are not indeed taking digital data, they are not ingesting, they are not storing data. So there is a very high gap between companies in the same sector. And this is in the technical part, but also in the business and legal part, most companies are afraid of sharing data with the competence. There is a lack of regulations because the regulations are being created at this moment, the Data Act, the Data Governance Act, the AI Act, and so on. And these are the barriers we are now facing at this moment. So we need in one side, or we need at least to address three or four challenges in order to make this data economy a reality. In one side, we are seeing a lot of initiatives. DataPorts is one of the initiatives we are creating in the project. We are creating technology. We are integrating technology, but there are other 10 data platform projects, 5 in industrial, 5 in personal. There are other projects creating technologies, and we need convergence in these first steps. We need to get consensus and try to go in the same direction, trying to look for interoperability, at least between different technology approaches. On the other side, we need standardization. And there are some initiatives that are working on the standardization. We need also experimentation facilities in order companies that are not good, do not have a good level of maturity or in digital maturity, that can go and experiment with data. And of course, we need to create awareness about the data technologies. But maybe awareness is not the first step in this endeavor. We need to start from the beginning with, but I think we need to solve this convergence, this standardization, and this experimentation in order to create a very solid basis, and then deploy and make awareness. In ITI, we are doing our best in order to create a technology stack for companies in different sectors. And we are creating a stack for data exploitation and data sharing. We are also piloting this stack in different projects. DataPort is one of them, but we have other projects at regional level, for example, to create data spaces for the industry in the Valencia region. We are also fostering different events in Europe in order to evangelize regarding data economy. For example, Data Week, European Big Data Value Forum, which will be in Valencia in October this year. So very good opportunity to go in deep dive in these data technologies. And we are in brief trying to help companies in getting into the data economy. So yes, there is a need to create awareness. I think we are on the way. It's a long way, but we need to go step by step, and with this bet of the European Commission or European Union in being leader in defending the principles of using data, the citizen and companies' principles in using data and exploiting data.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. So I see that working smart on awareness as a process, as a policy, will eventually increase the penetration of Europe in that driven global market. Jaime, shipping and maritime is quite a challenging sector. What challenges do you see? And do you believe that synergies are needed to expand the existing ecosystems and generate a new economy?
Yes, okay. Okay, I think the maritime sector has been electronic for a long time ago. I don't think the same in digital terms. Perhaps there's not so much digital, but it's the case that he has been electronic for a long time ago. And, and I think in maritime and maritime and port sectors there are a lack of coordination. So as I said before, there are a lot of silos in place, no? But I think that the main challenges now and the things are about the trust, about willingness to share data, and of course, as Daniel says, now is a matter of standardization and interoperability. I think the legal, semantic, technical, and organizational. So it's a matter of governance. Also, interoperability and standardization are basic. But also, let me speak about the technology, because I think that here we have big companies that has a great digital maturity, but also small and medium enterprises that has not enough digital capacity. And I think that when they want to share data we must try to achieve an internet of data, as I call it, no? Because when they want the data, or if they want to share or to know some data, they must search for the data. As we now we want to know some piece of information, we try to obtain it from Google or from something like that. No? And I think with data must be the same. Not all the businesses start to think, I need blockchain, I need an API, what I don't exactly understand what it is. So I think this must be openness and technologically neutral, no? And I think this is the main challenge and the most important thing. So perhaps the semantic web and all of these new technologies or new ideas for data sharing are a must, and we need to adopt it as soon as possible.
Thank you very much. Shipping companies needs to increase their trust in this new ecosystem, new world, this smart generation. And I think all of us here, we need to invest on that. Daniel, data is the new oil in the digital era. Powerful tools are created to utilize data efficiently and create greater value. European Union invest in such tools. How close is their adoption by the ecosystem stakeholders?
Mhm. Well, very in line with my first comments, and I will be more brief in this one. Yes, there are a lot of initiatives that at this moment are running to create technology. For example, and being fostered by the Commission. For example, we can have big data value association, we can have FIWARE, we can have Gaia X, we can have IDSA, which you are using in DataPorts. And there is a kind of panoplia or kind of mesh, if I can say, of technologies. And we need to focus our effort now in the convergence. I said before, when we talk about the data economy or data spaces or data-driven business, we are talking about a decade project, not 2 years, 3 years project. So we are on the way. We have established a plan at European level. And we need to go step by step in order to get the success, which is the adoption of technologies. So DataPorts and all the other projects in this topic, new projects that are now starting in 2023, like DataMite, which is also a project led by ITI, which is creating technology. Other projects like EU has for data, or the new Simple, which is not the Simple that you mentioned. It's without the E, the final E. It's a 150 million tender from the Commission in order to create an open source middleware for building data spaces or data-driven applications. So, and it will start in few months, and it will be for 4 years. So we will have a lot of projects ahead for creating new technologies. And and the challenge is how these technologies can go to the companies. I think one important point, in addition to the standardization that I mentioned before, is having success stories, success cases where these technologies have been deployed and have created impact, and then use all the stakeholders of all the mechanisms we have at this moment, the European DIHs, the iSpaces, which is a mechanism of BDBA, technology centers, testing and experimentation facilities, all that we have in our European data strategy to show the impact of these success stories. If there is no impact that we can see, companies in the value chain will not join this endeavor, even if they have been told that there will be a lot of opportunities if they join. So we need to show impact, quantitative impact, and then I think this should be one of the action points while the technology is being developed, in order to have a good framework for develop and standards to develop data spaces and data-driven applications.
Thank you. So we actually need to promote these success stories, and I believe all here agree that DataPorts is one of them. So let's work on that for Datamite, as you mentioned, simple or other future to be success stories. Shu, it's your turn. Data enables seaports to become cognitive. Information sharing is a key element in this transformation. Is this a time where knowledge will allow seaports to relate to other smart ecosystems?
Good question. I'd like to take this opportunity to highlight a couple of extra challenges that are related to your question. One of them is that working directly with the EU, as I do, the Commission does not know what happens in the real world. We have to be honest. They don't have the experience to know what happens in the real world. That's why projects like this are really important to be able to inform. But as far as technology is concerned, the EU is moving with the technology, but I don't believe that the everyday business is moving with the technology at the same pace. For example, I know that, and I shall come to the reason why I'm mentioning this, I know that EDIFACT is still a very, very used, effective data exchange mechanism in many, many places in the world and many industries, many sectors, and particularly the container sector. But the EU does not see EDIFACT at all, does not recognize it, does not mention it, wouldn't know what it was if it jumped out and bit them. They have no idea about it. And yet we have to somehow bridge. And I think you mentioned this. We have to bridge from where people are to where they need to be, and we need to balance the technologies. But the reason I mention all this is because I think there's another challenge, which we haven't mentioned yet, and that's the single window challenge. Single being completely the wrong word. There are lots of single windows. And not only do we have the European Maritime Single Window, which I mentioned earlier, we have the IMO, International Single Window, and its recommendations. At least we've got the data sorted out together, but there's all the technologies. They're not all on the same level field. But also we have the European Single Window. And that is from Taxud, from DG Taxud, and that has to relate to this as well. So how do the port community systems relate to these EU single windows? I think that's really, really interesting because the ports community systems, I've watched them grow over the last 10 years, would that be fair? They are really, really well established. They're well matured. They do a wonderful job, and they're in a number of the different ports in Europe, for example. How are they going to relate to the member state single windows? So they're going to be set up as maritime single windows. How will we get the benefit of it and make sure they benefit from all their work so far? I think these are some very important things that will come up in the future. And I'd just like to add, I'm very appreciative of the fact you've invited a UK resident to your meeting. All this talk of Europe, I know we're being recorded, so I have to be careful what I say about my government. But you can be assured by me that I am extremely sad about the current situation, which is why I have a resident permit in Germany, which they kindly enabled me to have. So yeah, and we're all talking English. I mean, here I am, the only English native speaker, not even in Europe, technically, in the EU, and we're all speaking English. So thank you all very much for putting up with me. Thank you.
We all agree on the opportunities. So we need to increase the level of awareness, the awareness strategy to the top level of EU. That would be on all our benefit. Christophe, one of DataPorts' innovative solution is the integration with other existing platforms. And the integration with Posidonia solution was a successful example. What does the future look like for software integrators in Seaports ecosystem?
Thank you very much. Actually, the future is brilliant because there is a lot of work to do still. but it's all a matter also of maturity, as we mentioned, depending on countries and the level of maturity, there will be a different orientation. So I just jump on what Sue mentioned to make some bridge, maybe from European institution authorities or national governmental authorities or even research partners. We all have a role, and there should be some bridges between also private companies with them, because we are facing the reality of what the ports are requesting. And but this is also a responsibility to be aware of what is promoted by the regulations entities, where we are going to, the harmonization, the convergence, the standardization, and also for the awareness. So let me just show some maybe a future perspective. So as was mentioned, for instance, the IMO made in its fall convention mandatory that every port authority should have a single window starting in January 2024. So this is very restrictive, and yeah, and there are like 8,000 ports around they want also to reduce waiting time. So in order to reduce waiting time, we have seen some use cases also in DataPorts in order to have better prediction of ETA, estimated time arrivals, or ETD, or use of resources. They want to be smarter for the use of the machinery, the equipments within the port. So they want to reduce the crane movements or the railway movements. So we are going towards multimodal systems, you know, to share data between several sectors. The logistics chain is global, and we have to go through a global solution. So there are initiatives on different levels: European, international, national research, and we have to advance. So the future is very good, because there is already a good demand and a good maturity of technology and solutions. But we cannot stay like this. We have to go a step forward in order to share this data within trust network, and data governance, as mentioned by DataPorts, is a key element also.
Thank you. Let's hope that all these ports will embrace DataPort solution. It will be good on all of us. A closing statement by each one of you. Jaime, you first.
Okay, for a closing statement, I think we are regularly failing in cooperate. I think it's a conclusion from this this roundtable, no? So the message it could be that we all together can develop a bridge over travel water, no? The important is to do it all together and with the feet on the ground.
Thank you. So,
Yeah.
No. Okay. Thank you. Yes. So maybe yes, to just take a bit the points that were mentioned: harmonization, convergence, standardization, and awareness are key elements, but also bridges between different entities around the world in order to think globally and not only locally.
I think we are facing a big opportunity in Europe, maybe the biggest opportunity. We have to lead worldwide the approach of data and AI, and we need to work with very generous work together in order to make consensus and get critical mass in order to build these technologies. And we are a privilege. We have the privilege of being pioneers in this kind of projects like DataPorts. So keep working on this.
Thank you. I'd like to take the opportunity to sell what we do in CEFACT just for a moment, because we do have a multimodal, cross-industry reference data model which covers the complete supply chain. And we hope that this sort of foundation, which is contributed to by over 700 experts over 20 years voluntarily, And I would like to encourage any of you who have any interest in this to take part in the UN CEFACT activities, because it's all volunteer, it's global, it's interesting. I think it's interesting. Not everyone maybe thinks it's interesting, but please take part. Please be involved, because that can help to be the glue that puts these things together from the semantics side. And I'm talking purely about semantics in that particular respect. So thank you. That's my sales pitch.
Reaching the end of our session panel today, I would like to thank the audience, the panelists, the hosts, the organizers for the event, and of course, all of you. Thank you very much.
Just give me the opportunity just to say thank you very much to the panelists. So that were really interesting discussions. Thanks to all the presenters during the day. We're going to have lunch now for those that are staying here. And of course, thank you to the organization, to the host, to the Valenciaport Authority and the Valenciaport Foundation for hosting this meeting. So I hope you have enjoyed, and the discussions were really interesting to you. Okay, thank you very much. Bye.